The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by DraftKings. Jumping back in to the NFL today, and you're going to be seeing a lot of NFL draft coverage coming up over the next 2 weeks as we get ready for that fantastic Thursday where we like to win some prop bets. Not going to lie to you. Joining me today to break down maybe some fantasy football free agent news and maybe a mock draft or two that he has up right now on ftnfantasy.com is Jeff Ratcliffe from ftnfantasy.com, from FTN Daily, from FTN Bets. What's going on, man?
Not much. Well, the mock draft, the most recent mock draft I put up, of course I put up, and then immediately it was pretty much rendered useless because the Carolina Panthers decided to trade for Sam Darnold. I did have them trading up to that 4 spot where Atlanta is currently. But in my next mock draft, because there's still time for more mocks, I'm going to have another team trading up to that Atlanta spot. That's going to be a very coveted spot with all these quarterbacks. It's draft season. We're just over 2 weeks away. This is the best time of year. I love it.
Well, what people can do is go to ftnfantasy.com right now. There's the entire fantasy rookie scouting guide, player by player, all the comps, all the information that you need to know about this upcoming draft. And I assume that you've put in 24 hours a day on this. It looks immaculate. So everyone should go check that out right now. ftnfantasy.com if they want to get a piece of that.
Yeah, that thing is a labor of love. Takes years off my life. Every year I do it, but it's well worth the process. Went through 150 prospects, gave you player comps for the biggest names. So 9 tight ends, 12 quarterbacks, 18 running backs, 24 wide receiver player comps, but profiles much deeper than that. Stats you need to know. Also at a glance pro day stats with heat maps. So if you want to see who was the best in the 40-yard dash among the wide receivers, the greenest color is the best, the reddest is the worst, right? You can at a glance compare these guys. And then on top of it, you also get rankings for 2 quarterback super flex leagues, because I know a lot of people are doing those right now, and my personal draft board. And the best part, you get in now, you know these players for the draft. Then after the draft, we come back around, we update this with all the players on their teams, update the rankings, update the draft board, and give you additional post-draft fantasy football analysis. There's nothing better.
Remember to smash the like button for the episode in the comment section. You tell me which skill position player you hope, that's realistic at least, that your favorite team drafts in the 2021 NFL Draft. I'm curious to see who the people are going to be on. Now, listen, if you have pick number 21, Trevor Lawrence, probably not going to make it to you, so maybe you leave Trevor Lawrence off the list. But something that's realistic, at least, or maybe hopeful that this player might fall to your team, or they go up and grab said player. The other thing right now, too, at either of the FTN sites, whether it be FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, or FTNBets.com, the full season NFL Pass early bird pricing is out right now. It's $349.99 for the year, and it includes all 3 of the sites. So you don't have to buy the individual packaging at each of the ones. So $349.99. Use code MAYO at checkout. Get 10% off, because that price is only going up from here on out. So if you want to get in right now, ftndaily.com, and go check out the all-site, all-exclusive NFL Pass at ftndaily.com. What I want to talk, just before we kind of jump in here, do you see a ton of moves at the top of the draft board? Like you said, do you think that Atlanta trades their pick? What situation does Miami end up trading their pick if, like, some of these quarterbacks are still left on the board somehow?
Well, I think that's a very likely scenario. They're in a prime spot, and they've already shown they're going to move. They've already moved twice, and the draft hasn't even gotten here. The way I see it unfolding, we know it's going to be quarterback. We know it's going to be very likely Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. We don't know who the third. I'm not taking the cheese on Mac Jones just yet. Something just doesn't compute there for me. But at 4, if either Atlanta has one of 3 things, right? Atlanta can go get themselves the quarterback of the future, but then they have a Matt Ryan problem, obviously. They could go and get a generational prospect in Kyle Pitts, or they could trade out. Now at 5, I do not see Cincinnati trading out. Initially, I thought they might be going left tackle, but, I think they're pretty set at tackle, to be honest with you. Jonah Williams there on the left, so I don't think Penei Sewell goes. So that's it. That's a spot where we could certainly see Kyle Pitts, perhaps Jamar Chase get reunited with Joe Burrow. So yes, at 6, Miami There are 3 teams who I could see moving up. Denver, obviously, in the market for a quarterback. They have nothing. They don't even have a bridge with Drew Lock. You have New England, who does have a bridge with Cam Newton, but they have scouted quarterbacks hard and want to get up. They're at 15 currently. And then Washington at 19. They got a bridge with Fitzy. Fitzmagic is there, but he's up there in age. And sure, that's all he really is a bridge. They could get up there as well. So that 6th spot is going to be a very coveted spot. We could very well see 5 quarterbacks go in the first 6 picks.
Do you really think that's going to happen? Because I can't recall a year where, I mean, obviously that's never happened before, but it just strikes me as someone's going to start slipping, maybe 2 guys. Someone will make it. I guess Vegas isn't inside the top 10, so they can't just go completely off the board and take some like Jabroni, who's no good in that like number 4 or something like that. But it just strikes me as one of these guys is going to slip, maybe 2 of them. So if you're New England or Washington or even Denver, maybe Denver doesn't even have to trade to get their quarterback.
They may not have to. My initial mock had them taking, this was 1.0 way back like a month and a half ago, had them taking Mac Jones at 9, but that would still be 5 quarterbacks in the top 10, which is also uncharted territory. I don't know if you can play the waiting game. You know, the waiting game already showed that it's not going to quite work, because if you wanted to wait out, you know, San Francisco, who was at 12, well, San Francisco already beat you to the punch. Carolina figured they were out of the mix, so, you know, they get Sam Darnold. And maybe that ends up being something for him. Philly trades back, but Philly also could have 3 first-round picks next year, and so they're going to roll with Jalen Hurts. But I mean, you're essentially, I think right now, 3 teams competing for 2 quarterbacks, and maybe even more than 3 teams if we consider the likes of Chicago. Do they really buy in on Andy Dalton? You can put out all the Instagram and Twitter posts you want about him being a QB1, but do you really buy in on that? I don't think so. And, you know, you mentioned some of these other teams who may be in the market, maybe a Raiders as a dark horse. I just don't see waiting working this year. And I do see a lot of teams who will be willing to trade out of that spot. I mean, any one of those teams up there, you know, we could see, I don't think Cincinnati trades out, but you could see Detroit at 7 trading back. Carolina seems to think they're content where they are at 8. They could trade back. So, you know, any of those picks up for grabs, I just don't see the quarterbacks falling. It's a quarterback-driven league, man.
Why is Detroit not being talked about of taking a quarterback here? Yeah, they got to eat a year of Goff, but if Goff's no good and the quarterbacks in this draft are good, you're sitting at number 7. Why not take one?
I think you already have an instant headache there right out of the gate, which they have so many headaches. You're talking about second half of the season, there was no defense who was worse than the Detroit Lions. You're talking about a team who has, and I'm honest on this one, 0 starting wide receivers. Everybody loves themselves some Tyrell Williams, but they forget that he only had 1 good year, and we're now, 5 years removed from that. Quintez Cephas, whatever. Brashad Perryman, whatever. And I like Quintez Cephas in Dynasty, don't get me wrong, but he's young and unproven. You have a lot of work to do. Sure, you have a nice little backfield. I think Jared Goff gets you by for right now, and you have a lot more. Like, Jared Goff can keep you in games. He's not going to win you games, but he can keep you in games right now, and you have a lot more to attack. Like, you're not trying to get to the mountaintop just yet, so I think that you have to address all these other areas first.
Why is Justin Fields apparently slipping down draft boards? I don't quite understand it.
'Tis the season of liars. I can't take anything at face value right now. I think this kid is such a special player who does have some growing to do. Let's be clear. There's one player who I think is immediately starter ready and has been born for this, and that's Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence is generational. Trevor Lawrence is put in the can't miss, and we don't have a lot of those in the history of the NFL. You know, when you're put into a category heading into the NFL with names like John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Andrew Luck, that's pretty special. Zach Wilson has some deficiencies that he needs to clean up at the pro level, and Justin Fields does as well. Justin Fields doesn't have the processing speed of Trevor Lawrence, but that's not a bad thing. Josh Allen didn't have that processing speed when he came into the league as well. And you know what he did have, though, is he had the athleticism. He could lean on that, make things happen, and we saw that over his first 2 years. That's why he was such a good fantasy asset, was all the scrambling, leaning on his special athletic traits. Now, this year, it all came together, and we saw, man, this dude's a stud now. Fields has that kind of ability, and you cannot teach a 6'3", 230-pound guy to run sub 4.5 in a 40-yard dash. Like, that just, those players don't grow on trees. but there are elements to the game that you can teach him. And as he grows and develops, I think he's going to be a really quality player. But more importantly for us, selfishly, it's going to be a really good fantasy asset.
Well, you said Mac Jones, and I mean, that's going to be all the reports are saying number 3, San Francisco, Mac Jones right now, but you're still not buying it?
Not buying it. Why would you trade 3 first-round picks? Now, they got a first round in exchange, but they're giving up 3 first-round picks for who I've been calling Kirk Cousins plus. And that's not a bad thing. That's not even a joke. Like, Kirk Cousins plus is a top 15 starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. But is he the type of guy, like I just said with Jared Goff, to get you to the mountaintop? I mean, we see the Los Angeles Rams, right? They had this diesel offense. And Jared Goff even put up 4,600 yards twice in that offense. That's like Aaron Rodgers doesn't do those sort of passing yard numbers, not comparing the two, but just to put it into context. But he couldn't get you to the mountaintop. He isn't the type of player who says, get on my back, boys, we're going to win this championship. He's not texting them like Tom Brady saying, we're going to win the darn game. It's not the type of player he is. Mac Jones, kind of the same type of guy for me. And granted, hey, yes, he won at Alabama. Of course, he's playing on an all-star team. He's playing on a team with 2 wide receivers in the top 15 picks. The number 1 wide receiver on the board last year as well when he got to play on the field. So, I look at him. Is he a good quarterback? Is he a first-round quarterback? Yes, absolutely. Is he a quarterback you mortgage your future for? No, I just don't see that.
So do you think it'll be Fields or will it be Trey Lance there?
I think it could be one or the other, to be honest with you. When I see both of these guys, like I said, they have developing to do, but they both have the intangibles that you can't teach. Trey Lance, perhaps even more mobile than Justin Fields. And Justin Fields isn't like a mobile first guy. He's a traditional, more pocket passer who has the mobility. The beauty to San Francisco, though, is you don't need a guy who you can plug in immediately and have to start. You have Jimmy Garoppolo, so you can lean on Garoppolo for 4 games, 8 games, maybe even a full season. I mean, that would be a little unprecedented to have the number 3 overall pick sit for the first season of his career, but I don't want to say it's completely outlandish when you have that resource on your team. But I do think it's much more likely one of those 2 guys. You draft, this is kind of like an NBA thing for me, the way I view it. You're drafting for ceiling. Mac Jones's floor is higher than both of those guys, but those 2 guys have a significantly higher ceiling. So if you're going to mortgage your future, you're doing so for a high ceiling.
Can you tell me a little bit about Zach Wilson? I don't want to hear about arm strength or anything good. I only want to hear about bad things about Zach Wilson. If he's going to the Jets, I want him to be terrible. So what are the big negatives with Zach Wilson?
Inexperience, at the highest level is probably the biggest knock. He's playing at BYU. He's not playing at Alabama. He is a 1-year wonder as well. Now, 1-year wonders can work. Joe Burrow was in a lot of ways a 1-year wonder, although the writing was kind of on the wall for Joe Burrow, and then it was the perfect season. So I don't want to say that's a complete knock. I think that we're going to see some decision-making issues with Zach Wilson early in his career. And then probably the biggest knock actually has nothing to do with him. It's that he's going to a team that is still ill-equipped from a personnel standpoint. Whoever goes to San Francisco is in a much better spot, right? You step in, you have an all-world receiving tight end in George Kittle. You have movable chess pieces at wide receiver in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and you have a diesel run game. Now, the run game it's going to be very similar with Mike LaFleur in the Jets organization now, but who's back there? Who's your running back, right? Who's your wide receivers? Denzel Mims, okay. Corey Davis, all right. I mean, I like Corey Davis. I think he's better suited to be a number 2 than a number 1. So I just don't like the setup, at least for success initially for Wilson. That's why I'm actually higher on him in the NFL draft than I am for dynasty fantasy purposes.
Well, let's say we were to take 2 guys and throw them back into this draft. Much has been made about how Sam Darnold's only like 8 years old or something like that. So let's call him a young man. Let's throw him back in. Don't have to worry about his contract. He's just in this draft. Let's throw Tua back in this draft too. Where did they rate out among these guys? Because it sounds like it's Lawrence, and then it's this group of 4. Obviously, they would probably be in that group of 4, I think. Would they be near the top of this class of the next level, or would they be at the bottom of that?
At the bottom, but not the very bottom. I think Jones or Darnold. Maybe it was probably Darnold at the absolute bottom. Jones right there, and then Tua would be a tick ahead of him. We can't undervalue what we saw at Tua at Alabama, and we can't overvalue what we saw last year, coming off a devastating injury where it's kind of remarkable that he was able to get on the field and start. So I'm going to save my full evaluation for him until after this year we see a full season out of him. Now, and that's the other thing too. Do we see a full season, or do we see Brian Flores say, all right, we got Brissett here too, so we can get him in as that relief pitcher at any point like they were doing with Fitzy last year? But I do think you look at, again, that ceiling aspect of Lance and of Fields and of Wilson, and the ceiling is higher than what you have with the other guys. And really, Wilson's a pretty mobile quarterback. I think that kind of has flown under the radar. For me, there's he's on the player spectrum of Aaron Rodgers, a lot of similarities there. Please don't hit me up on Twitter and be like, oh, you're calling him a Hall of Famer already. No, I'm saying similar playing style, can make those off-platform throws, has the huge arm, can flick the wrist, the ball's down the field, and is smart enough to use his legs at times and add extra yards that way. He's a little bit of a better running quarterback than Rodgers was coming into the league, but along that same style of player. So, yeah, those guys would be ahead of Darnold and Tua.
So just talking strictly fantasy, and I guess maybe this depends on the final draft spot and where these guys end up going, but besides Lawrence, who is the fantasy asset in this draft? If you were to take, let me try to see if I can do this. If Fields, like you said, hey, maybe he has the athleticism of Josh Allen, he's so fast, can we expect a lot of rushing yards from him? Or do you think that it depends on where he goes to see if that's unleashed or not?
I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to fully contain it. Same thing with Lance. I do think there's going to be a lot of instances early in their careers where if that first read isn't there, I don't see them necessarily working through their progressions and then, maybe throwing the ball away. I think it's going to be a lot of first read go and they're off and running. Now that's of course dangerous as well because, scrambling in the NFL can lead to getting hurt in the NFL pretty quickly. So I always love what they did with Lamar Jackson. They realized, okay, this guy is he's a better running quarterback than he is a throwing quarterback. And I think he's impressed people with his chops as a passer, but he's not a 4,500 yard thrower by any means. So let's build an offense that taps into that. Let's design runs. And then that way, if they're design runs and then Lamar on top of it does a great job of avoiding the massive hits. I'm not saying he completely avoids them, but does a better job than, like Michael Vick did, for example, or Robert Griffin III. That's beneficial. I think you have to design around these guys initially, but you're not going to be able to stop them from running. Are they going to be 1,000-yard rushers? Highly unlikely. But could they be 500-plus yard rushers? Yeah, they definitely could be. That's in the cards. And then especially, for our purposes, we want to see these guys running in the red zone, hopefully getting some touchdowns because they're pretty darn valuable when a quarterback gets in the zone as a runner.
Let's kind of move to the NFL guys right now and just talk fantasy. Tua looks like he's going to be the guy in Miami. You said it's kind of shocking that he even ended up on the field last year. He's kind of a mystery in year two and what he's going to present in this offense, but he's got some weapons, at least in the passing game, to go with now. Maybe the playbook is going to be a bit more unleashed for him last year because it really did seem like, okay, here's the Tua package and it has no plays in it. And here's the Fitz package, which is just press the ball down the field. Obviously, not the same types of quarterbacks, but it was very distinctive how different the play calling was when one was in the game versus the other when they were in the game. But from a fantasy perspective, do you think that Tua gets a bit more mobile this year? I know that he's not a huge runner, but can he do enough with his legs either to extend drives or even chip in 3-4 fantasy points per week and then have enough through the passing game where he can be maybe a top 12 guy?
I don't know if we have that. I mean, I want to see what they do at wide receiver because essentially, Devontae Parker is sort of like a DeAndre Hopkins type. He's not a blazing fast guy, but he has good ball skills. He can play up above the rim. Tua, the difference that I saw with Tua, at least, kind of comparing him to Fitzpatrick with Parker is Fitzpatrick was much more willing to just fit that ball in there when you had that inch of daylight, right? Whereas Tua, it felt like he almost needed him to be open, and Parker's just not going to get that type of separation. It's just not the type of player he is. So we'll see if he becomes more comfortable. But I'd love to see him get a speed guy. Like I'd love to see them get him paired back up with Waddle or, Devontae Smith, who is actually a lot faster than a lot of people realize. The play speed is just outrageous. Or you could get one of these guys, the possible day 2 guys, the Kadarius Tonys of the world, who could potentially open up that offense a little bit. Well, top 12 would be really pushing it, though, for Tua. I could see him surfacing as a QB2, but top 12 is pushing it.
Well, I mean, when Will Fuller ends up returning from his suspension from PEDs, obviously he's going to be faster. He was on PEDs. This is going to be great for Tua.
Yeah, how long until he is off the field again? It's so frustrating there. But, I mentioned the DeAndre Hopkins comp for Parker. In a lot of ways, there's a similarity in their skill set. That's good for Fuller. He knows how to work off of that. The problem, though, is does Parker eat up the coverage like we saw with Hopkins? Because that was certainly helpful. And there were times where Fuller would absolutely just take over a game. And then, hey, is Tua as willing to make those throws as Deshaun Watson was in Houston? That's the other question there. I mean, there's no doubt Fuller has a lot of upside, but, he also comes with the downside of could get hurt at any time, as we've seen over the course of his career. I think having Gesicki there, though, is pretty interesting. Started to come on, obviously, yet again last year. We're only seeing the arrow pointing up with him. He has the freakish athleticism. So if they can tap into that as well, it's good for Tua. I do think we're going to see a lot of run in this offense. I don't know if it's going to be Myles Gaskin, but we know the team likes to utilize the running back and whoever that running back is in a 3-down role. That could, so may not be the fastest paced offense out there either.
Do you think that there is any shot that they take Pitts at number 6?
Oh yeah, there absolutely is a shot. You any team, once you get beyond the quarterback teams, the teams who are going to take quarterback hell or high water, any team out there has to consider him. This kid has special traits. He's obviously the size speed aspect that you can't teach. He plays like a wide receiver. Like I end up comping him in the FTN rookie fantasy scouting guide to Darren Waller because I did think it would maybe break people's brains if I put Calvin Johnson in there, but that's the player I see a lot of in him. He's not quite as fast as Calvin, but he's pretty darn close. And he has such impressive ball skills. Like he scored 12 receiving touchdowns last year with just over 40 catches. I mean, everything he did was great on the field. He's a type of player who could completely transform the position. So you have to consider that. Now, I need to be really clear when I talk about him in this way, because a lot of people hear me and they hear a fantasy analyst talking about a tight end and they say, oh my God, I got to take this guy. I'm talking about him for NFL purposes. NFL teams are evaluating him not for 2021, but for 10, 12, whatever years he's going to be in the league. When we evaluate him for 2021, I think people are going to draft him entirely too high. And this is really telling something here. There's only one tight end in NFL history who went over 1,000 receiving yards in his rookie year, and it was Mike freaking Ditka in 1961. That's how long it's been. There's nobody who's even really gotten close. The most recent good rookie tight end that we saw was Evan Ingram, and the only reason why he put up good fantasy numbers is because nobody else was there. Everybody got hurt at the end of the year. Remember the hype over TJ Hawkinson, a top 10 pick. He ends up having a great week 1 and then nothing from there. So just remember, in redraft leagues for fantasy football purposes, it takes a while at the position to produce. I do think he's a top 12 guy, not knowing his landing spot, but taking him, some people are taking him as the 4th tight end off the board right now, which is just outlandishly crazy to me.
Well, who would be the 4th tight end off the board? I'm guessing, I haven't done rankings yet, but just, off the top of my head, Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, then blank. So I can see why people want to take him at that spot. I'm with you. Rookie tight ends can be valuable week to week in DFS, but for your season-long team, they're probably going to sink you more often than they help you go to a fantasy championship. So who are we looking in that 4 spot? Is Noah Fant ready to take the leap?
Not quite. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. That's the one problem. So I mentioned Detroit has nobody to catch the ball, but they do have TJ Hawkinson, and he was a top 5 option last year. And actually, Jared Goff, he doesn't push the ball downfield. Okay, great. Throw it to the short and intermediate. Throw it to Hawk all day long. I don't mind him. I think Mark Andrews is interesting. Of course, Mark Andrews goes as Lamar Jackson goes. So if Lamar is super efficient, like touchdown passing wise, then Mark Andrews is going to be a beast. If not, he'll still be top 5-ish. And then I think the other player you have to give serious consideration to there is Dallas Goedert. Zach Ertz is fully expected to be out of town. They're also a team with very little depth at receiver, and Goddard is an absolute mismatch. Now, he's not Rob Gronkowski, but he has a Gronk-like skill set, an inline guy who is impossible for linebackers to cover over the middle. So he could be another guy there. I think if you look outside of the top three, that's really got to be the next three for me.
And do the New England guys factor into this at all? Is it going to be tough because we don't know who's going to be who?
That's the big thing. Yeah. I would love to just say, oh, it's Henry or oh, it's Smith. I think that's going to be frustrating week to week. I mean, we used to experience the Belichickery at running back annually. Well, it looks like we're going to have some Belichickery at tight end, where one week Jonnu Smith's going to look awesome. Then the next week it'll be Hunter Henry and back and forth. And good luck predicting, not to mention the fact that you're going to have a quarterback who's going to run 100+ times. You have a run-heavy offense already as it is with all the running backs they have in that backfield. So I don't know how many targets they're going to be either. It's frustrating. I mean, it's good for New England. You know, they obviously have a plan that they're executing here, but for fantasy purposes, it's going to be a major headache.
I'm just looking down, just trying to jog my memory of tight ends. I've been in golf mode for some time. I have to get myself reestablished back into football. Gerald Everett in Seattle seems to make a whole lot of sense to me, though.
Yeah, Seattle's another team who does like to accumulate tight ends. So you have Will Dissly there. He's going to be involved. That to me makes it a little bit problematic. Plus the fact that you are going to be, unfortunately, a run-heavy team. You know, they have Chris Carson back, so they're going to run the rock. So there's not a ton of meat on the bone there. Everett, you know, he's an interesting player. I was hoping he would go to somewhere where he truly would be featured. He's going to be a part of this offense, though. He does come with some upside. Wouldn't shock me if he ends up being like a top 20 guy. But it comes with the downside of this week. It could be Dissly. Like we've all been there. We're all watching NFL Red Zone or watching a game. The darn tight end scores. You have the tight end on that team. You jump up and you realize it's the freaking other guy. The darn other guy. Dalton Schultz caught the touchdown, right? I think that's going to happen with Everett a bunch this year. Will it end up being Will Dissly or whoever else they have behind him, sometimes getting in there, sneaking in for touchdowns.
Yeah, that's going to happen to poor friend of the show, Donald Parham, when Jared Cook starts catching his 4 touchdowns scattered across every 6 games throughout the course of the season. So poor Parham owners out there, they're probably not going to be enjoying too much of the Jared Cook experience this year. So that leaves Gesicki. Is Logan Thomas a legit top 5 threat at the position?
He's right there, pretty darn close. You have to love the fact that you get Fitzy in there. You may have a little bit more competition for targets, though. You do have, Curtis Samuel on the roster now as well. Kelvin Harmon should be back this year and in the mix, the slot receiver as well. But Thomas, I mean, we no longer say, hey, converted quarterback. We just say tight end. He's coming off an awesome year. And yeah, I do have him just outside of that next 3, but him, Noah Fant, they're both top 10 guys in the mix as well.
I did want to talk about Darnold because I have not talked about this on the show yet. What do you make of this move to Carolina? And what was the problem with Teddy Bridgewater?
Teddy's Teddy, man. No upside.
But
you can't really tap into.
Then what are we looking at with Darnold?
You're looking at an open book, I really think. I don't think we've seen what Darnold can be. He's been in purgatory for the last 3 years. And now you put him in an offense that has better weapons. You got some juice with DJ Moore. You get him back with Robbie Anderson. And by the way, probably the best running back of this generation as of right now. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's spectacular. Got to stay on the field. But, when he was on the field last year, the 3 games he played, he was outrageously good. It's just couldn't stay on the field. But that does help. And then I think the big deciding factor as well is, you do have a very bright offensive mind in Joe Brady. Hey, if Joe Brady turns Sam Darnold around in 1 year, this dude's going to be a head coach next year, no doubt in my mind. That plus the age for Carolina really puts this in play. You're not getting a guy who's Matthew Stafford, 33 years old. What is he, 9 years younger than Stafford? So you have some time here. Plus, you do also have that 5th-year option, which is a nice little piece there for Carolina that they can use. And Teddy's more of a backup quarterback. It's amazing that he's playing. Credit where credit's due. but he's a backup quarterback at this point. And again, I never really mean that as an insult. The world needs backup quarterbacks as well, and he'd be one of the better in the league. But I just don't think he's the type of player who can actually lead these teams to NFL NFC championships and then the Super Bowl. I just don't see him as that type of guy.
What do you think is a higher number? Sam Darnold touchdown passes or pounds he gains living in Charlotte eating barbecue?
So are we saying he's going to gain what? What's the over-under here? 19 and a half, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at his body type, I'm going to say like 35 and a half.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I wonder what their workout program is. Maybe they had to write that into his contract there. I mean, hey.
Were you surprised they didn't get a tight end?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know how big of a tight end, how much of a big part of that offense a tight end needs to be. You think back to the LSU offense, because that's like our comp here. Like Thaddeus Moss was there. He's really a blocking tight end. You had the other guy, Sullivan, who basically like a wide receiver who played tight, like a bigger wide receiver type, bigger, slower wide receiver type, like a big slot. I don't know. I don't know if you need anything more. And like Ian Thomas is still young in the tight end spectrum. I like to give these guys 4 to 5 years to fully develop. And, maybe that's where they are with him. I don't know if you necessarily really needed a tight end. And, you can't rule out the fact like Freiermuth's going to go on day 2. Is it Freiermuth? Do you look at a guy like that to Carolina? Perhaps. I'm not really, honestly, not even really sure where Freiermuth's going to go, but he's going to be a guy who will contribute, almost immediately and then continue to grow into the position. It's a pretty interesting player, actually.
We see a whole bunch of quarterbacks, day 2 quarterbacks, potentially even day 3 quarterbacks, just randomly stumble into their chance to start, like a la Gardner Minshew kind of thing. Are there anyone in this draft in particular? I guess it's going to take the proper landing spot and an injury to happen in front of them to see them in action. Is there anyone you're excited for from like day 2, day 3 quarterbacks?
Not really day 3. I mean, it's really tough on day 3 in this era to be a factor.
You're not a KJ Costello guy?
Well, KJ Costello, he couldn't even keep his job in Stanford. Actually, it's the kid who took his job who I think is more interesting, Davis Mills. But, basically everything I've heard is Davis Mills isn't going to make it past round 2. The problem with Davis Mills, while he looks the part and has a lot of things you want for an NFL quarterback, he has 11 starts in his college career. So that's a little bit tricky there. I think the player probably, other than Kyle Trask, he's the obvious answer. He's the guy who could go on day 2. He's a throwback quarterback, a statue, but can sling it, looks the part. His hands are like 15 inches, like he's like the Drew Bledsoe type of this year's class. But I think Kellen Mond is really the most interesting. If there's like a Dak Prescott in this class who goes a little bit later, but then, immediately steps in and makes an impact, that's who it is. Kellen Mond, 4-year starter, played in pro-style system, little bit undersized, mobile though, a leader, can throw the football, and now has a lot of buzz behind him. He's another guy who will very likely go in round 2.
I like your player comps for some of these guys just because I saw Tim Tebow next to someone's name. I was like, oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, so Sam Ehlinger. And it's like he's like a righty Tebow. That's really what he is. It's like the thing that you loved about Tim Tebow, and I actually am going to finish this sentence. The thing that you loved about Tim Tebow for fantasy is that he ran the football. He was a quarterback one, a top 12 quarterback. The problem with Tim Tebow for football was that he would always look to scramble. And then on top of it was that lanky, wide arcing throwing motion. Well, Ehlinger just does it from the right side. It's not as elongated as Tebow's, but it is pretty elongated. And yeah, he looks a lot like a right-handed Tim Tebow.
I want to hit some free agency stuff with you. James Conner goes to Arizona. So bad news for Chase Edmonds, but maybe it's not bad news for Chase Edmonds because the worst news would have been Arizona takes one of these running backs either in the second round or maybe even in the first round, and they just come in, usurp all of the starting work. I still think that Edmonds is going to be the guy that gets the majority of touches, and maybe he's like old school Kenyan Drake. When Kenyan Drake was on the Dolphins, it was like, hey, he has these 8 to 12 touches per game, and he's great. Now that he's in Houston, he's going to get 25 touches a game. And it turns out he just produced exactly the same as he did on the 8 touches. Maybe Edmonds is just one of those guys, and that he can still be very much fantasy viable as a running back too in PPR formats. And you just pray Connors doesn't steal all the touchdowns. But Kyler Murray was stealing all the touchdowns anyway. So that's not why you were drafting Chase Edmonds in the first place. I feel like he's still going to be fine, but we can get a better discount on him now.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that take. I do think that's the popular sentiment, and I could be way off base with my evaluation here. But the way that I view it, like, he's not like Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake's 6'1". Edmonds is 5'9". And I think we're ignoring Edmonds' role in the offense. Like last year, every time we'd be like, no, you got to free Chase Edmonds. Kenyan Drake isn't doing that well. Edmonds is the better fantasy option. We were ignoring how the numbers were being produced. Every single week, Kenyan Drake was dominating in terms of the early down work. Edmonds was producing as a receiver. He had he didn't even have 100 carries last year. So there's guys in the NFL every year that we see with this profile. Like the classic name would be like somebody like Theo Riddick from recent history, or, Gio Bernard. These are guys who are going to get 100 to 120 carries in the course of a season, but they're also going to catch 50, 60, maybe even more passes out of the backfield. Depends on how the season goes. James White was maybe an extreme example because he barely carried the football, but that type of role in the offense, that's what I'm seeing with Chase Edmonds. A little bit undersized, but you can utilize him in space like that. He is dynamic when he gets the ball in his hands, but every time he's gotten the opportunity to be a true feature back, he gets hurt because he's a bit undersized. You bring in Connor, no problem with the size issue there. I said on Twitter, and a lot of backlash from this immediately after this news was released, that Connor's just going to take Kenyan Drake's role in the offense. He's going to be the early down guy, 15 carries a game or so. And then Edmonds, his role has not changed whatsoever from last year. I know people don't want to hear that, but you know what? I'm not here to just tell people what they want to hear. I'm telling you what my evaluation is. I don't see anything changing. Now, of course, the big challenge with Connor is he can't stay on the football field. So that's going to be an issue there. And we're certainly seeing major signs of decline out of him. But I do see, at least now, if they don't address the position in the draft, that's going to be the committee situation we're looking at.
Yeah, and I agree with you that Connor will be the lead of that committee, but it'll be all carry based for him, very little work in the receiving game. And then he probably gets the goal line work, but like we know that Kyler Murray just calls his own number and takes touchdowns away from them anyway. So being the goal line back in Arizona isn't the most useful thing going. All I really want is to make sure that this isn't like a 75-25 split. If we can get like a 60-40 split in this situation, and we can bump up Chase Edmonds from like 7 carries a game to, let's say, 10 carries a game, or at least with the potential to take over the job if something were to happen to Connor, which we could expect at this point based on his track record. And then he's still on the field enough where he can be getting 4, 5, 6 targets per game, that he becomes this cheaper piece of this back. Like, he's the more valuable piece of the committee, despite the fact that he doesn't touch the ball quite as often. And then you always have the room to grow if anything were to happen to Connor. I just think this Connor situation just casts such dispersion on Chase Edmonds that you're looking at a situation where now, if people were so hyped that he was going to go into the 3rd round, he might drop back down to like the 6th or the 7th now if people want to, just buy into Connor, which I assume no one wants.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Edmonds will still likely be the better or the earlier fantasy pick, but you're right. If he goes in that range where you're talking about, he could be your 3rd running back, or if he even goes a little bit later, say he's an 8th round guy, the 4th running back you take, I don't mind that at all. I just want to make sure that, my goal is always to have expectations where they should be, as opposed to, too lofty. I mean, we see that so often with the fantasy audience. The expectations are so enormous sometimes for some of these guys, and then you hear the backlash as a result. Chase Edmonds is a really good passing down back. He's undersized for early down work, so we just have to know the type of player we're dealing with.
Yeah, if you can somewhat project an increase in usage, not substantially, like you get him from 97 attempts to 125 or something like that, and then maybe you luck into 135 or something like that. And then he had 53 receptions last year. If you can get that up to like 65 or 70, you're still looking at a running back too, I think.
I could see that. He could be a little bit frustrating when you lean on those PPR guys like that, but I could see that.
What do you make of Kenyan Drake going to the Raiders? And what does that do to Josh Jacobs?
I don't think it changes Josh Jacobs. It's just further affirmation that, or confirmation that the Raiders don't buy into Josh Jacobs as a pass catcher at all, like whatsoever. They don't want to use him. So he's basically like a Derrick Henry type in terms of usage. Could he be a 300 carry guy? Yes, absolutely. Is he going to average much more than 2 catches a game? Probably not. He could end up the season with 30 to 35 catches, and that's that. So he's never going to add you that aspect for fantasy purposes, which adds what I always call the Derrick dilemma. The Derrick dilemma that with Derrick Henry, if Derrick Henry scores a touchdown, he's awesome. If he doesn't score a touchdown, it's probably not a good fantasy week, right? Because he had 20 carries for 98 yards and no catches. So he didn't get you much in a PPR league. I think I'm going to get that with Jacobs. We're going to see Kenyan Drake a little bit in terms of a runner, but much more so involved in the passing game. John Gruden has basically said as much. So Kenyan Drake could be a 45, 50 catch guy. Josh Jacobs, a 260 to 280 carry guy. And we're kind of right where we were all along. The interesting thing, you have players, you have Jonathan Taylor, who's not a pass catching back and has a primary pass catching back on that roster in Nyheim Hines, who people are regarding as a top 10 option. You have Derrick Henry, who I mentioned, and obviously, rightfully so, he's a top 5 option on a lot of boards. People have moved Josh Jacobs down to like RB20 in places. So I'm missing something in translation there, and I'll be happy to take Jacobs at a good value if we can get him.
Wouldn't the move just be to take Drake and then pray something happens to Jacob and then Kenyan Drake gets the best of both worlds?
Potentially, but I don't want to just draft a player hoping that another player gets hurt.
Oh, Jeff, that's the move. That take Latavius Murray every year. I'll be taking some Devonta Booker for when Saquon goes down this year. These are all potential RB1s that you can get in the last round if things fall your way.
Well, I'll tell you the exact rebuttal to why that doesn't work.
But it does work. I have won leagues doing this.
Tony Pollard is the rebuttal. Tony Pollard. Last year, Tony Pollard was an 11th round ADP. That means he was drafted in basically every league. When Zeke missed that game, what was it, week 15 last year? Tony Pollard was available in half of leagues. So that meant that all those people who used that strategy, half of the teams dropped this dude. So they basically, whatever, they picked him, they dropped him. So I don't think people are going to hang on long enough in a lot of instances. That's why I typically don't even use that strategy. I use my late round picks at other positions and try to get I try to get 4 running backs before I get to round 10.
See, I use rounds 10 to 16 to basically just who could possibly have the easiest path to the highest upside in the situation. And you're right. If it doesn't happen in like the first 4 or 5 weeks, then you probably have to end up throwing them back because bye weeks hit, injuries hit, and you need people to fill in. But if those injuries come along a little bit earlier, then all of a sudden you don't need to be scouring the waiver wire. You got these guys already. And with there being very few bye weeks very early on in the season, you have some time to use your bench to your advantage in that way, where once the buys end up coming along, then you have to make some tough decisions. But there are only probably a handful of guys who are backup running backs entering the year that you're like, oh, if the starter gets hurt, this is their job. And they're going to be incredibly valuable. Like another name to throw onto that mix would be like Alexander Mattison last year. Now, people got it conflated that, oh, he was going to have a role with Dalvin Cook. Like you could flex him every week. That's never going to be the case with these guys. I would never draft anyone in the handcuff situation to say, oh, you know what? I can just roll them out there every week anyway because they're in a split spot. Now, I either want Dalvin Cook to be out or I'm not using Alexander Mattison. So when his ADP got up to like round 7 or something like that, that's stupid. But if you can take someone like round 14 and round 15 and just roll the dice for the first few weeks, it at least prevents me from having to battle everyone out on the waiver wire with them should something happen.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Guys like that are what I often call a premium handcuff anyway. So you have a few of them every single year, and they're not late round guys. They're not a Tony Pollard. They're a 8th round guy. Usually that's where Alexander Mattison was going last year. Lat Murray was going in that range. I don't mind taking those guys as my 4th running back and realizing fully that they're a scratch-off lottery ticket. They're not a guy who I'm using, at all, at the beginning of the year. This year is going to be interesting as well because we don't know when the bye weeks are going to be, but we can assume based on everything that we're hearing from the NFL that they're going to start later than they ordinarily would. Because if you have a bye week in like week 5, there's some teams that are going to be playing a lot of games in a row then. So I think that we're going to see them a little bit more condensed this year So that could throw some interesting wrinkles in when you look at strategy for draft. I don't really, I don't use bye weeks as like, I'm not going to draft these guys because they have the same bye week. But I do think of bye weeks in that bye weeks change rankings, right? Guys who are ordinarily wide receiver 4s become wide receiver 3s. They become startable options during the bye weeks when you take players out of the mix who are above them. So it does, your depth is very, very important at that point. And you now have to think about, all right, can I hang on to this depth all the way up to that point of the season? How am I going to use these bench spots for waivers? All of that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Gio to Tampa. Does this render every single Tampa running back essentially inert for your fantasy team?
No, it renders Tom Brady even better. Gio Bernard is really one of the best pass blocking running backs of this generation, and that is exactly where they were lacking. Leonard Fournette can catch the ball to the backfield, can't block to save his life. Ronald Jones can't really do either of them. Keyshawn Vaughn is a rookie now going into his second year who's still unproven. Why not just get a dog? Get a dog back there, and that's exactly what they did. Giovanni Bernard's not going to do much. What does he have, like 25 carries, this year? He's not going to have much there, but he'll be out there in key passing situations, especially when they want to keep Tom clean. We know the offensive line is really good. That's a big reason why they won that Super Bowl. Their offensive line was better than Kansas City's offensive line. Add another piece to the puzzle. For me, this is a football move where the rich get richer. This is not a fantasy move. I was really hoping we would get a running back at the end of the first round to Tampa. I don't think that's as likely now because I was thinking you might get one of those 3 down backs in Harris or ETN or even Williams. Don't think it's likely now. I do think a wide receiver is pretty likely though, but I think it's just a football move. Doesn't really change my outlook on them for fantasy. Still Fournette, but I don't love it.
I feel like it would just take away from all of them, just considering it's another body to put on the field. So everyone snap shares, and thus their potential for more touches would go down.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's really the passing down work. That's that was what made Lombardi Lenny so valuable in playoff fantasy leagues. He was an every down guy, basically. You take that off the plate. Now you're almost a touchdown dependent, early down back. That's not good. We also have to deal with the fact that any week Ronald Jones could come out and be, beast mode Ron Jones. And yeah, it's going to be frustrating in that backfield.
Last one, Patriots offense with no Edelman now that he's been cut. Maybe we'll talk about him going surefire Hall of Famer Julian Edelman, as Twitter has either told me or not told me. It's either one or the other, which we have to do it. Look at his playoff numbers, Jeff. He's so good. But in that offense, if you're going to take any member of the receiving game, who would it be? Is it Jacoby Myers, who was getting like a 30% target share last year?
No, I don't think it's going to be him. I honestly think you're in a situation where the 2 tight ends both lead the team in targets. As of right now, unless they address the position in the draft, which they may have to. They really have to. I don't know if they end up trading N'Keal Harry or not, but that is, that's really the glaring problem here. Belichick, it's already come out. Belichick ignored his scouts on that one. His scouts had A.J. Brown higher. A.J. Brown would have looked pretty good for that team. And now you have N'Keal Harry, who you almost – I think you're just trading him away for a bologna sandwich at this point. I don't know what you can even get for him as a first-round pick. So, yeah, I think it's tight ends. It's tight ends. Cam Newton will be fine. He's going to be a 2-quarterback league quarterback. Nobody's going to want to draft him because everybody loves to hate Cam Newton, which is fine. Just draft him late. He'll score a bunch of touchdowns as a runner. He'll run the ball a whole heck of a lot. I sure as heck hope he throws for more than 8 touchdowns this year, but he should. He's not going to be a 4,000-yard passer, but even if he moderately increases his passing touchdown productivity, he was quarterback 17 last year. Okay, fine. I'll take him as the 23rd quarterback off the board where he's going right now. No problem.
Jeff Ratcliffe, you can listen to him every day on Sirius XM Fantasy Radio and check out all of his work up on FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, and FTNBets.com. Pump the draft guide once again because it's an amazing read.
Yeah, before I do that, I'm excited for this news that we could see a CFL-XFL merger of some sort. That'd be exciting there. I know the Canadian crowd there, no doubt, loves the CFL.
Oh yeah,
Hey,
as a Canadian, I can tell you how fucking good the CFL is. Good God.
you guys just love it. What is the Canadian football? Is it like your fifth sport, sixth sport?
Let's see, curling or hockey, curling are probably 1 and 2.
Lacrosse too, right?
well,
Because I'm actually from Canada and a professional lacrosse
Yes,
player.
I saw that. No, that is Canada's official summer sport, with hockey being its
Okay.
official winter sport. Is the CFL is like really? I guess it's big in Montreal and it's big out west in Canada. Like I live in Toronto, no one gives a fuck.
So, well, there you go. To the XFL, that's what's going to save it. But regarding the rookie fantasy scouting guide, which you can get over at ftnfantasy.com, you can buy it by itself. But you know what? Why don't you just subscribe to the package here? Either you can go all access, like Pat mentioned earlier, if you want to get in on our betting and DFS content, or if you just want the fantasy football stuff, cool, all good. ftnfantasy.com. Sign up for a subscription there. You'll get rankings and projections and waiver wire recommendations, all the fun stuff that you get, tools, all that good stuff throughout the entire year. Plus, you get access to the guide, which is available right now. Player profiles for 150 players, rankings, 2 quarterback rankings, top 30 IDP rankings, my draft board, all kinds of stats. It's goodness. And it's 42 pages that will get you ready for the NFL draft.
And I can't read, so it's tough for me. I had to get someone to read it to me. So maybe I'll try to do an audiobook version of it at some point.
There we go.
All
I
right.
like it.
Yes, so you can get the FTN Fantasy, the rookie guide, if you just want that by itself, or get the All Access Pass at FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, and FTNBets.com. $349.99 for the year. Code Mayo gets you 10% off that glorious package. It's only going up, like I mentioned, so you might as well jump in now if you're committing to doing everything there is to do, whether it's betting, DFS, and fantasy on football this season. Remember to smash the like button on the way out, rate and review the podcast. That'll do it. NFL is back, and be prepared for a whole lot more football content coming at you very soon. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!